All right, episode 2 of Winded City Countdown. We made it back, gentlemen. We did it once, and we didn't say, well, that was stupid. Let's not do it again. Other people might have said that and been hoping we didn't do it again. But unfortunately, if they've subscribed tomorrow morning or tonight even, if they refresh, they're going to see episode 2, bottom 10 this week. Worst moments in Chicago history. I'm Scott Sternal. Ben Russo from his kitchen in Roselle, Matt Urich from his man cave bedroom parents' house in Streeter, Illinois. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Good, good. I would,
Depressed?
yeah, I was gonna say I'd be doing a lot better if I wasn't so depressed about this list because
Oh, I
it's
thought you were
pretty
going to be depressed about
sad.
living in your parents' basement.
I don't live in the basement. I live upstairs.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Tremendous. So, anyway, yeah, this was not the most fun list to research. I will say I did not struggle with coming up with my 10.
See, I oddly did. I don't know. There were about five that came instantly, and then there were a few I sort of had to sit on it and think about it. And but yeah, overall the whole list is really, really depressing.
It is. It's just a bad list. So, really no other way to get to it, but these are the 10 most gut-wrenching plays or moments in Chicago sports. Again, we're doing this not from 2000, we're doing this from about 1990 on, so you won't see the 1988 NFC Championship Bears versus 49ers. You won't see the 84 NFC Championship. You won't see the letdown on Monday Night Football from the Bears in 85. You won't see the Bulls getting throttled by the Pistons in 4 games in 89. You're not going to see those on this list. So
Oh,
Oddly enough, I don't think we have anything beyond like 2003-ish.
yeah, I think everything's sort of within the last 15 years. So
I know.
I think that has to do with us being spoiled by the Bulls in the 90s. It's really hard to be upset about anything other than winning 6 NBA championships.
Yeah, because I know I had on my honorable mentions, I had the first time the Bears really broke my heart in 95 when they beat Minnesota in round 1, and then they went out to San Francisco and they kicked that early field goal, and it was like, hey, maybe the Bears are going to beat the 49ers here. Maybe it's going to happen. And then the Niners rattled off 35 straight or something like that, and it was over. So I had that from the 90s on there. It's really about it. I'm sure we
Yeah,
could have got...
we can get into some honorable mentions, but like I said, most of the stuff that made the cut was the 2000s and on.
All right, well, here are your bottom hits from the 2000s. We're going to start, we'll count off 10 through 6, and then we'll talk about it. So, number 10, Jay Cutler goes down with an MCL sprain, which I don't know why they call it a sprain when it's actually a tear, but whatever. I'm not a learned doctor. But he tears his MCL, and the NFC title game becomes a musical chairs of QBs for the Bears, in which they lose to the hated Packers 21-14. The 2004 Chicago Cubs, primed to make a run at their second playoff appearance in as many years. First time they would have done that since a long time ago. I think it would have to be, you'd have to go back to the 20s or 30s, if I'm not mistaken, for the last time they went to the postseason back-to-back years, and they collapsed down the stretch. Number 8 was the Bears-Panthers 2005 divisional game where Steve Smith absolutely clowned our defense for 218 yards. 7 was Hawks-Canucks Game 7 of the 2011 Stanley Cup playoff where the Hawks rallied back from 3-0 down. And then number 6 was the White Sox end-of-season collapse in 2012, where they had spent 126 days in first place and just faded bad in September and October, going 13-18 and falling out of the division lead in that season and not making the playoffs at all. So there's your 6 through 10. Gentlemen, Matt, let's start with you. Which one on that list really breaks your heart the most?
boy, those are all really, really, really tough. The Cutler one hurts only for the reason that I feel, and I think the three of us agree on this, that he was so wrongfully accused of quitting in that
Jason
game.
Whitlock.
Maurice Jones-Drew.
Maurice Jones-Drew, MJD.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was throwing at him. He was bad. I mean, I'm not saying he was terrific in that game because he was pretty bad up to that point. But to say that he wimped out and didn't keep playing, whatever. That one was just dumb. And then to see Todd Collins, oh my God, that was so bad. He went 0 for 4, and they yanked him before the start of the fourth quarter.
Which means they had no backup quarterback.
Yep, which meant if Caleb Haney got hurt, they were screwed. They couldn't put him back in the game. And Haney went out.
You could argue though that they were screwed anyways if Todd Collins comes back in that game.
Well, yeah, either way, they would have been better off with Earl Bennett stopping, coming in and playing quarterback. But the other ones on that list, to stick with that Bears theme, that Steve Smith game, I rewatched part of that earlier today, and I've never seen Charles Tillman look that bad in a football game. He was terrible. He was so bad. Steve Smith just abused him all game. Bears couldn't tackle. He got open in the middle of the field all day. So those are the two that really stuck out to me. That 04 Cubs team was also really disappointing just because everything from 2003 and they got Maddox that year and then the way they faltered down the stretch. But I mean, all in all, going through all these was really, really tough. They weren't fun. But what about you, Ben? Which one stuck out to you?
The Cutler MCL was more just, at the end of the day, he was still your best option at quarterback. Todd Collins, Caleb Haney, this was that time when everybody was calling for Caleb Haney. Cutler was still your best option, and it was the NFC Championship game. I want my best quarterback on the field. The Bears-Panthers game didn't make my list at all. But, yeah, I mean, Steve Smith torched him like he always does. I think he did it twice at least.
He had 2 long touchdowns, and he had another 46-yard touchdown that got them down to the 2 and set up a field goal. So I want to say of his 218 yards, 3 of them were worth 150 or more.
Something like that. But, yeah, I mean, the 2004 Cubs going 2-7 the last 9 games of the year, just giving up that late lead. I mean, the roster makeup, you mentioned Maddox. I mean, they also traded for Derek Lee the offseason before, and that was the Garcia-Parra trade. I mean, we thought that was going to turn everything around. You got Garcia-Parra and Merton, who ended up being a decent piece for a few years, but, I mean, that was the year. I mean, they finished better in 2004 than they did in 2003, but the late season collapse did them in. But the one that really, really, really stood out to me on that list was that 2011 Hawks team. That was the year after the Cup, after they had to get rid of everybody. They got back into the playoffs as an 8 seed, and that's really the Vancouver rivalry, took the next step. Hawks battled back, like you said, Scott, down 3-0, get it to overtime in Game 7. If you remember, the Sharp had that wide-open net that Luongo somehow went across the crease to save it. And then, goddamn, Chris Campoli with his weak dump attempt. He dumps it into the middle of the ice, right into Burrows.
And then it was
Burrows,
like a break.
Of all people, it had to be Burrows who puts it right over the shoulder of Crawford, which, that's the problem with hockey ones, is it's so quick. There's no, development. It's just shot,
boom,
puck, and that game
it's
over.
It's so instant.
In the NFL, you're like, oh my God, let's look for flags. Was there a flag on the play, or was there a foul called in the NBA, whatever it is? But in hockey, it's over. And it's just, you sit there and you look and you go, what the hell just happened? But I remember just pinning it all on Chris Campoli with that weak dump to the center of the ice.
So I have some notes here about all of these, and I've got 3 that I want to hit in particular. The Hawks-Canucks Game 7. They dominated Games 4 and 5. Boland, if you remember, came back from a concussion and should have never come back. But he came back, and he seemed to be a big difference maker. Game 6, Ben Smith scores in overtime. Michael Frolik had one of his 2 career postseason penalty shots. In fact, for a period of time, he had the last 2 postseason penalty shots. He had the one in 2011 that was converted, and then the 2013 Stanley Cup, Game 6 against Detroit. In a series
which is one of the greatest GIFs, whatever you want to call it, of all time, of him skating past Detroit's bench, and he just has his arms up like he's flexing, and he just zooms by with his arms up flexing while the whole Detroit bench just has their heads down. That is one of my favorite moments ever.
And what gets lost in that Game 7 is Taves scores this unbelievable goal from his knees, shorthanded with 1:56 left, and you're just sitting there going, how did this happen? And it was one of those like the Nashville Hawks Game 5 in 2010 where they score the goal shorthanded, and you're just like, we still have to kill this penalty. How are we going to do that? So that one particularly stung. The 04 Cubs collapse. You said Derek Lee, the trade, Greg Maggs, we trade for Nomar. The lineup: Michael Barrett, Derek Lee, Todd Walker, Nomar Garciaparra, Aramis Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, Moises Alou, Corey Patterson, Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood, Matt Clement, Carlos Zambrano. I mean, all guys that had some staying power in the league for a little bit after 04.
Did Garciaparra get hurt that year? I feel like he got hurt at the end of the year.
No, I don't think he got hurt. It was 05 where he
tore like his groin or whatever.
Yeah, his groin
that's what I was thinking of.
Bone, so that was awful. And with that 04 Cubs team, 2-7 in the last 9, 3 extra inning losses, 2 one-run game losses, and they blew a 6-5 lead against the Braves. So that makes up 6 of those 7 losses. I mean, if you even flip the script on 3 of those, you're in a one-game playoff with the Astros. And for number 10, I wanted to touch on this quickly. The what-if scenarios that surround that Bears-Packers game. So if Cutler's MCL doesn't happen, and he's able to come back out there and rally the team, his career is markedly different. Right, he wins the big one. He gets the team to the Super Bowl. You have the Packers, who had lost to Atlanta 4 weeks prior, and then they went down there, and Matt Ryan laid an absolute egg in the dome. And everyone was like, all right, cool, Bears, bring on the Packers. We got home field. When in all reality, everyone that really knew about the team was going, no, we really want to play Atlanta. You want to go down to that dome. You want to be on the fast track because that defense was built for speed. And they probably could have beaten Atlanta. I was more nervous about them playing Green Bay than I was Atlanta. Green Bay, they sneak into the playoffs that year
because the Bears didn't try in Week 17.
They beat the Bears 10-3. They finished in a 3-way tie with Tampa Bay and the Giants, and they get in on strength of victory, that tiebreaker. But if they don't sneak into the playoffs, who knows what changes happen in Green Bay? And then the following year, Green Bay goes 15-1, and they lose to the Giants in the conference, or not the conference semis, but the divisional playoffs. And then, if the Bears go to that Super Bowl, the Bears go 10-6 the next year. Let's just say, Lovey never gets fired. Lovey's maybe still coaching this team, and the Mark Trestman era never happened. You'd have to argue that Lovie Smith might still be coaching this team if he got them to a second Super Bowl, and who knows? And if they beat Pittsburgh that year, and he gets that Super Bowl victory, he's got at least a 5-year window with that Super Bowl win.
That's a lot of what ifs.
It is a lot of what ifs.
And
but when you put all those what ifs into play, it really becomes that single end of season there becomes just all the what ifs that add up there. Really, a lot of careers affected. I mean, Aaron Rodgers becomes Mr. Clutch there at the end of that season. Cutler is vilified by the media even more. Matt Ryan lays an egg in the dome, and he hasn't really recovered since.
True. And here's another interesting what if, and I think it was a big what if then. What if Caleb Haney did the improbable and led that team to a Super Bowl, and then if, say, Cutler didn't play? I mean, Haney proved himself to be pretty bad anyways. And one thing, this is so random, but I looked up the box score of the Packers Bears NFC Championship game, and I don't know why, but ESPN has Caleb Haney's middle name like in his thing. I don't know, it's just really weird because it's like Jay Cutler 6 of 14, Todd Collins 0 for 4, Caleb Jeffrey Haney 13 of 20. Like amazing. It's so random. And then also
we would mistake this Caleb Haney for the other Caleb Haney.
Yeah, the other one that was equally terrible and didn't do anything in the NFL. Real quick too, we didn't really touch on number 6 yet.
Yeah.
Which was the White Sox collapse. And that one was very interesting because that team wasn't really supposed to be all that good because Ozzie was gone, Burley left that year, and I have this written
still
down.
A good team. I mean, that was a team, again, that's another end of the season collapse. They were 4-11 the last 15. The Tigers went 10-5, and like Scott said, it was like 120-something days they spent in first place until
days in first place, 13-18 combined
I
record.
want
in
to say
September,
it was
October.
126 for the whole season, but I want to say up until they lost the lead, it was 117 days consecutive that they were in first place until they blew that lead. And then again, you talk about the what ifs. I mean, look at what they've done since. I mean, you're at like 66 wins, 73 wins, 76 wins. I mean, they haven't recovered from that. And I mean, it's
amazing.
That was just an all-time collapse.
They have they just stick with the status quo with Ventura too, which kind of blows my mind. I don't really know what the full worth of a Major League Baseball manager is. I think we saw a bit of that with Joe Madden this year on the north side, but
there's only I don't want that's a debate for another day because there's only a handful of managers I think that actually have that
big of an impact.
So yeah. So there you go. So recapping 10 through 6, 10 was the Jay Cutler MCL NFC title game. 9 was the 04 Cubs collapse. 8 Bears-Panthers 05 divisional game. The number 7 on the list was the Hawks-Canucks game 7. And 6 was the White Sox end-of-season collapse in 2012. Although I know if I were a Sox fan, that one doesn't hurt quite as bad because I'm still 7 years removed from watching my team having won it all. That's the funny thing about
it. Still doesn't change the fact they haven't had a playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs since. So
no, that is true. So there's 6 through 10. So we're gonna move on now. We'll hit 1 through 5 in just a few minutes, but we want to talk a little bit about the AFC and the NFC title games we watched last night. I'm gonna start with the NFC title game because I'm gonna gloat a little bit because Ben, I believe,
you didn't predict it right.
Considering that you wrote down Carolina, crossed them out, and wrote Arizona, then crossed them out and wrote Carolina, and then crossed them out and wrote Arizona, and ended up on Carolina. And
so I picked the right team, right?
You picked the right team.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. No, there's no buts. I picked the right team.
It needed clarity. I don't even remember who I picked. I think I picked Arizona, to be honest.
No, you picked Carolina. We all picked Carolina.
Oh, okay, cool. Good for me. All right.
But I definitely said that was going to be a rout, and that was a rout last night.
And we're all 1-0 because of it.
We are all 1-0. I don't know if it's just me, but the Panthers just seem to have that feel. You don't want to get too much into because I'm not a momentum guy. I don't like team of destiny type of stuff. But man, if a team ever just seemed to have that feel around them that they were just going to finish this thing off in 2 weeks. You'd have to say Carolina has all the good things happening for them right now. The defense is rock solid. Cam Newton is continuing to play at an MVP caliber level. We'll talk about the AFC game in a minute because I have some notes on that I really want to hit as to why I think Carolina is going to dominate in the Super Bowl. But man, the Panthers looked unreal last night.
I completely agree with your stance on them having that feel to them. Sometimes teams just have that it factor, and I know you can't quantify that sort of stuff. And I'm like you, Scott. I've never been a momentum sort of person, but the fact that that team has been so dominant this year and has had so many doubters, which has always been interesting to me because all along I had this feeling that Arizona could probably beat them. Seattle could probably beat them. And they went out there and put a whipping on 2 really, really good football teams. Like Cam Newton, that guy's just unreal. He could do everything. When he came in the league, he was that guy that you didn't know how he was going to work per se. He's a big guy. He was fast. And he runs the read option. He could stand in the pocket. He could throw the deep ball. He could roll out of the pocket and make throws on the run. The kid is just playing out of his mind right now. And then with that defense, they're just relentless. I do honestly feel bad for Peyton Manning because he's got a chance to get his brains knocked in against that team in Super Bowl 50 because they're that good.
Ben, your thoughts on the NFC title game?
I mean, obviously it was an incredible showing. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from Carolina. I mean, you win by 34 or whatever it was. I'm not going to be like, oh, come on, they all this. I mean, but at the end of the day, Carson Palmer had 6 turnovers, and yes, you have to credit Carolina's defense for forcing some of those, but just watching him, it was bound to happen, what he was doing, and then they got down so much so quick that. they were forced to throw that much. I mean, that thing collapsed around them. They got creamed. They got their butts kicked. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, they're the favorite in the Super Bowl, like they should be. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, that defense is insane. But we'll see now. I mean, obviously, the Thomas Davis injury hurts. I mean, I think he's supposed to play, is what they're saying. But
he
I don't
keeps saying, yeah, he says he's playing, but the dude broke his arm.
They said that because he got the surgery today, it gave him a better chance of playing because he can play with a short cast, and it's definitely an injury that you can play with. But now playing and being effective are two different things. I'm not sure how effective you can be with a broken arm. I mean, maybe I'm not, like Scott said, I'm not a smart doctor here, or a doctor at all for that matter. But
I was just gonna ask. Does that mean you are?
But I mean, think about it. If my right arm's broken, right? Like if I'm a running back and I'm going head on with him, and you can cut right or left, you're gonna go to the side where his broken arm has to grab you because I can't imagine there's going to be that much strength in that arm. I mean, I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but again, I think it's great if he plays. It's how effective he's going to be. I mean, they're now down Tillman, Jared Allen which take that for what it is. He was at least a little bit better in Carolina, and now Thomas Davis. I mean, injuries could
Roman
catch up
Harper.
to him, but
Roman Harper got hurt, and he's a solid safety. I don't know. He had like an eye injury, so I would have to guess he's probably going to be somewhat okay to play. But still, like that defense has been pretty beat up.
They have Luke Kuechly, which is that's
like I've said all along. He's Brian Urlacher part 2. Like I absolutely love that guy and love the way he plays. And they have Josh Norman, and that defensive line is crazy. Kawan Short, while everybody always talks about Star Lotulelei, they're the big nose tackle, the first round pick. Like the guy's awesome, takes up space, moves well. Kawan Short, man, yesterday that guy was just bursting off the ball. He's so good. Like that defensive line is crazy talented. I wouldn't be surprised though if Jared Allen plays. Was he completely ruled out for the rest of the playoffs, or no?
No, I think he was ruled out for a game.
He was still questionable as of Wednesday, and then Thursday they finally said, no, he's not going to play.
But then again, it's not like he's been super effective anyways.
Right.
Still another body and another guy that can get after Peyton Manning. I want to go to the AFC title game quickly here before we hit the 1 through 5 on our list. Denver, for their defense, won that game yesterday. I mean, don't get me wrong, Manning made 2 great throws to Owen Daniels, but the Denver drives after the 83-yard touchdown yesterday, the 83-yard touchdown drive, 3 plays, 4 yards, punt, 2 plays, fumble, 6 plays, 41 yards, punt, 3 plays, 16 yards, touchdown. That was after the Von Miller interception. 3 plays, 5 yards, punt, 3 plays, -4 yards, punt, 6 plays, 23 yards, field goal. 3 plays, -5 punt, 7 plays, 34 punt, 3 plays, -1 punt. And they didn't have a drive that went over 50 yards the rest of the game. And I think, Ben, you texted, why didn't Belichick kick the field goal? And I said originally, well, if you kick the field goal, you still need a touchdown. But, man, that New England defense was playing well enough yesterday that they could have kicked the field goal and still gotten the ball back and then scored a touchdown and won the game.
Not needed the 2, right?
Right. I mean, listen, Bill Belichick played by the book that he plays by, right? 4th and 1, went for it, failed. 4th and 3 with 3 minutes to go, went for it, failed. It worked out that they still had a chance to win it at the end. But, if you listen to Nance and Sims yesterday, you would have thought that Peyton Manning played the greatest game ever. And the fact that after their opening drive, they didn't have a single drive go over 50 yards the rest of the way.
Peyton Manning yesterday was game manager. That's Alex Smith football. That's what he was, without the ability to run, although he did have that long run, and that apparently he ran 17 miles per hour, which I highly doubt that. But it's so weird to see Manning play like that. And to Scott's point about that defense, what Wade Phillips did with that defense, the coordinator of Denver, I looked at this earlier. The Broncos blitz more than any team in the NFL this year, over 40%. I don't know what the exact number was for yesterday, but they got all that pressure with 3 guys, 4 guys.
They did better rushing 3 guys. Yeah.
Brady got hit 23 times yesterday, and that was the most times a quarterback has ever been hit, I thought is what I had read.
At least this season, I know for sure.
Yeah, this season. I mean, which is insane. I mean, you get to the AFC Championship, and you're going against the Patriots, and you're going against Tom Brady, and you hit that guy more times than anybody else all year at the quarterback position. That is just unreal defense.
I'll leave this one here. So, Tom Brady, I think we've come to know him as the quarterback who doesn't make a lot of mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's pretty much shown it throughout his career. Yesterday, that pressure got to him so much, he was making mistakes left and right. Now, granted, he got better as the game went on. I don't know if you start calling it fatigue on the Denver side, whatever it is. But if Denver's going to get that kind of pressure against Cam Newton, for all how great Cam Newton's been, I'm not going to knock him. He's had a hell of a year. He should be the MVP. But if you don't think that Denver doesn't have a chance in this Super Bowl because that defense, you're nuts. If they get that kind of pressure, and it hinges on that pressure. If they get that same pressure, there's no reason they can't get the turnovers like they did and give Peyton Manning those short fields to where he's only got to get a 20 or 30-yard touchdown or set him up for field goals. I mean, for as great as Carolina is, they're still going to turn the ball over more than the Patriots if they get that pressure, in my opinion.
Yeah, the biggest thing, obviously, is can you contain Newton when he gets out of the pocket? And Von Miller...
With those linebackers, I think you can.
Like, Von Miller, good enough to... DeMarcus Ware, I don't trust to be able to do that. But those inside linebackers are really... Like, Brandon Marshall's pretty good for being...
And Trevathan, pretty good.
They all move really well in space. So, and that secondary is really good. So, I agree with Ben. I think, the instant reaction yesterday was Denver...
-3, what?
Yeah. Like, Denver has no chance, but... That defense is good enough, and like Ben said, if you give Peyton Manning that short field, he's going to be smart with the ball. He's not going to turn over. That's just what he does so well. And you saw that yesterday. It's still just so weird to me to see Peyton Manning in like a Kyle Orton role, where it's just like, all right, we'll let you open it up maybe on 2 or 3 throws, but other than that, we want these short, intermediate passes. If you see something open down the field, go for it. But man, he just does not have the arm. He looks so old. It's really, really kind of tough. After 2 years? Was it 2 years ago? He threw 50 touchdowns or whatever it was. 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
So it's crazy to see him drop off like that. But I think the Super Bowl has a chance to be a really good game.
I will say as we close this up, I worry that we're going to see Denver-Seattle Part 2 with Carolina taking on the role of Seattle. I really worry about that, but.
There was no Von Miller in that Super Bowl.
You do have a fair point there. My concern is that
I'm not saying that's not possible either, by the way. But if I'm not saying I would put my money on Denver. I'm just saying we all counted Denver out against New England. Yes, Carolina's probably better than New England, but I think they have a puncher's chance because of that defense.
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll break it down a lot more next week when we do our top 10 list for next week. Should I share that now? Segue with that now, or should we save that for the end?
I was going to say tease it for the end.
Let's tease it for the end then. We're gonna tell you our top 10 list.
Keep the people interested
next week. Oh, Matt, that boat sailed a long time ago. The people aren't interested anymore already. All right, moving on to 5 through 1. Again, to recap the bottom of our list, 10 was the Jay Cutler MCL NFC title game injury. 9 was the 04 Cubs collapse. 8, Bears-Panthers 2005. Hawks-Canucks Game 7 was number 7 on the list. And number 6 was the White Sox end-of-season collapse. Ben, before I get to the list, were we tied at second? My notes got
we were the number 2 was tied
with number 3.
Yeah, so okay. You have 5, 4, and then 2 2s.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure because my notes got messed up while I was working on them. But number 5, one of the more recent gut punches here would be the Chicago Bears Green Bay Packers Week 17, 4th and 8. God help me, the man in gold and green did it again. 2012, D. Rose tears his ACL. Number 3, tied for second, Blackhawks Kings, Game 7, 2014, the year after the Hawks had won their second cup. the overtime winner by Alec Martinez, and tied at number 2 would be the Bears Super Bowl 41, Rex Grossman, Kelvin Hayden. Hayden gets a pick six when his toe is centimeters from going out of bounds.
He was out.
He was not out. He was not out. I watched that play 10 times today, just trying to say maybe he was out. Maybe like we'll have something new to talk about. Like there's new evidence that suggests he was out. There wasn't. He was in by centimeters, and then he just ran it all the way back. So 5 was the Bears-Packers Week 17 of 2014. 20 was that 14 or 13? 13. Sorry about that. 2012, D Rose tears his ACL. 2014 Game 7, and the Rex Grossman, Kelvin Hayden pick 6 in Super Bowl 41, tied for second. Gentlemen, we're not even at the worst of this yet, and I know I watched a lot of this today. I couldn't watch number 5 again. I'll be honest with you. I watched it a couple days ago.
I watched it about 3 or 4 times today. It was, oh man, just what?
Well, the worst.
8. Go ahead, man.
I rewatched it like you. I watched it like 3 or 4 times today. The complete and utter confusion on for the Bears. James Anderson is standing. He's got his arms above his head. He's looking over at the sidelines. Tim Jennings shrugs his shoulders. Major Wright drops down to right near Anderson, trying to get whatever the call is. He backs off as a single high safety. And then Conti walks down to cover the slot, and then he lets the guy run right by him. Like, they had no idea what they were doing.
Did the Bears have a timeout, Matt? I did not.
I'm about to look again because I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm with Ben. I don't remember.
It's gonna make me really angry if they have a timeout.
Well, they had 2 timeouts.
Amazing. Oh Jesus. Now I want to move this like further on the list. Like I want to
Major Wright has no idea what's going on. He should have been called. It should have been a penalty on Major Wright. He basically tackled the one of the wide receivers, but at least he did something. Conti just stood there with his thumb up his ass, had no idea what was going on.
and what sucks in all this is, as bad as that play looked, Julius Peppers
was so close.
So close to just getting a finger on Rodgers and taking him down.
He got a finger. He
needed another finger. Is what he needed.
That one is so brutal. Like the Conti thing just drives me nuts because conventional wisdom should tell him he does not have safety help over top if there's only one safety.
And he is the safety.
Yes, and there was no reason for him to be playing zone at all.
It's not even that there's not safety help over the top, that he should know that. He should know there's not safety help.
Because he's the safety help.
He is his own help.
Boy, I really tried for a long time to support that guy because I did think there was some talent. Yeah, I thought there was some talent there, but the kid he was terrible.
That might be a top 10 list on its own. Top 10 worst Chris Conti plays. Because I go back to there was that Washington game where like Griffin had that like Hail Mary of like a pass where it was like a receiver and Conti jumped like 3 minutes before the ball got there.
Yeah. To go back to that game, it's a game the Bears led 21-20 at halftime. It's a game where the Packers fumbled the ball and the Bears didn't pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh God, I forgot about that too. All right, I'm moving this to number 2.
That single play is the epitome of the Mark Trestman era. Just
dumb football.
Those guys didn't play hard for him. They didn't want to play hard for him, and they just played dumb football. And there is no dumber thing. That was the great thing about Lovey was that ball would hit the ground, and those guys would pick it up. Incomplete pass.
Oh yeah, if that ball was tipped and hit the ground, if it bounced before, a guy is going to go run.
And you're on it because you never know. And there it sat. It just sat there. And then the Green Bay Packer, I think it was James Jones, picks it up. It's just like, well, I suppose if nobody's going to take this ball, I'm going to go with it. A really interesting what-if attached to that game. I know I'm playing a lot of what-if tonight, but really interesting what-if with that
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the What If podcast.
If the Bears win that game...
They probably lose in the playoffs.
Well, no, but even worse than that, we might be just coming out of the Mark Trestman era this year.
The only reason I get that part, the only reason I say no is how bad that next year was, and who knows, maybe it's not that bad, but that team just gave up on him. And I mean, I'm not going to say winning a division at 9-7 and probably losing in the first round, changes the team that much. I mean, they clearly just did not like that guy. Has anybody seen a Bears player come out and say, "Oh man, I really liked him as a coach"?
No, not a
they
single
have. I
one.
haven't seen him.
No, I can't.
The only
think of
person that's
anybody.
done it is like Rich Gannon was the only person I know that supported him.
And that was supporting him as a QB coach. And as you can see, his stink has got all over the Baltimore Ravens this year. Number 4, the D Rose ACL. We won't talk about that too long, but that I felt like was really the beginning of the questioning of Thibodeau and his minutes and how he handled his players.
Well, if you remember, wasn't Rose hurt a lot that year? Was that where he missed a bunch of time?
And you're up 12 about that.
He missed like 18 games, but it was only a 66-game season, I think.
No, that wasn't the strike year. That was the year after the strike year.
Yeah, because Rose won the MVP in the strike year, correct?
Yes, and that was the strike year was that was going to be the second run for. That was the year after Miami lost in the finals. And I thought the year Miami...
Yeah, Miami won that year.
Yeah, the year Miami lost in the finals, that was the... Was that the strike year or two? I can't remember. That strike was the dumbest thing ever. But, Bulls were up 12, minute 30 go, and D Rose is in there because Thibodeau. I mean, that's really all you can say. Let's go to 2 and 3.
No, that was the lockout.
Was that the lockout year?
Yeah. Because the lockout was 2011. It started July 1st, 2011. And it was the 2011-2012. It was the 2012 playoffs when he tore his ACL.
Well, there you go.
See, I know what I'm talking about. They were 50-16 in that season. And Derrick Rose played 48 games.
Huh. Well, Ben, you are a stats guy.
Benny Chicago Bulls here. Come on. I'm a big NBA guy.
Huge. Biggest NBA fan I know.
All right, let's hit number 3 first. Hawks Kings, Game 7. And the Alec Martinez overtime winner. I think this one hurts for multiple reasons. The Hawks go up 1-0 5 minutes in. 2-0 8.5 in. They give it back to the Kings right away. Sharp gets one 12 seconds after the Kings tie it up. You go into the end of the first, down, up 3-2. LA ties it in the second, but then Sharp gets a power play goal at the end of the second, and it's 4-3, and you are literally 20 minutes away from your second straight Stanley Cup final. And to be honest, I think they beat that Rangers team.
I think so. The way the Kings got rid of them pretty quickly, so I think it was 5 games. They went up
3-0, and it ended up going 5, I believe.
Yeah, it was 4-1 Kings.
Yeah, and then Gaborik ties it with 7 minutes to go, and then we just become so accustomed to the Hawks winning these close games. Every overtime bounce seemed to go their way. At least every crucial overtime bounce, it went their way, and then you see that puck go off Leddy, and you're just like, oh.
Leddy without a stick too, right? Didn't he lose his stick right before then?
I just remember it being a high shot, to the point where if it didn't hit Leddy, I don't know that goes in. Can't remember it exactly, but I feel like that's going high.
It was. So
the Leddy was more or less a redirect, and it was just like Leddy didn't know it was coming. And
it was so quick. Yeah.
It was like fluttering, like it hit Leddy, and it was just. I just remember it like spinning and like barely like having enough like speed to even cross the stinking line. It was god. That's your like ultimate gut punch. I think I had that too behind our number 1, which we'll get to, but
and then let's finish out the 2 through 5 here with our other number 2 and the Kelvin Hayden pick 6, where I mean in retrospect everybody looks back at that game and goes, man, the Bears never had a chance. But it is 22-17. They have 1st and 10 on their own 38 with just minutes to go in the Super Bowl. And, I mean, it's not out of the realm of anything that they can go down and run 62 yards and run the ball with Thomas Jones and do some short passes. But on that play they decide to stretch the field.
And it was just a back-footed throw, the Grossman special. I mean, and it was to Muhammad, who
wasn't your go up and get it guy.
Well, I don't even think he I don't think he would. You watch the replay; it didn't even look like he was expecting to throw because, I mean, obviously it was back foot, so it was going to come up short. But you looked, and Hayden was clearly looking right at it, jumping and catching it, and Muhammad was just turning around as Hayden was catching it, trying to grab him, and that's what almost got him out of bounds. But yeah, it was the smallest of spaces. If the grass was tilted towards the field, I think he might have been out of bounds, but that was it.
Matt, your final thoughts on this one?
And that was such that whole game was just pure Grossman, and he had the mistakes, he had the fumbles, the interception. He just played so poorly, and that one was, like you said, Scott, it was still a reason. I mean, it's not like Peyton Manning played that great of a game, and the Bears were dominating on the ground. What was it? Thomas Jones had, I think, over 100. He was averaging 7.5 yards a carry, 112 yards on 15 carries. The guy ran the ball very, very well. The one thing I do remember very vividly about this game, which actually is a little side note, is the first ever radio show I ever did with Scott was the next day. So little Winded City countdown trivia there.
All right. Do we have to do number one?
Well, first you got to recap it, and then we have to do number one.
Okay. I like to pretend number one didn't happen, especially after today when I started reading more about it again, and I was just well, there it is. All right, 10-2. Number 10, Jay Cutler, the MCL tear in the NFC title game in 2010. Number 9, the 2004 Cubs collapse. Number 8, Bears-Panthers 05 divisional game. Steve Smith torches the Bears. Number 7, Hawks-Canucks game 7. The terrible Campoli play that launches the Canucks to round 2. White Sox end of season collapse 2012, where they spent 126 days in first place. Number 5, Bears-Packers week 17. Number 4, the 2012 NBA playoffs, where Derrick Rose tears his ACL and has never really recovered from that. Number 3, tied for 2, Blackhawks Kings game 7. Alex Martinez's overtime winner sends the Kings to the Cup final, and then the Rex Grossman interception to Calvin Hayden in Super Bowl 41 return for a touchdown to essentially end the Bears' chances of winning the Super Bowl. That is 2 through 10, your bottom 10 of the worst Chicago sports moments. And now, number 1, there's no drum roll, there's no fanfare. We all know what it is.
Really need, what we need? We need a sad trombone sound.
No, there's not a sad enough trombone.
No, yeah, this was a tough one.
So,
and unanimous number 1, by the way.
Unanimous number 1, 2003 NLCS, that 8th inning. I've got some numbers for you guys because I like the numbers. 7 men left on base by the Cubs in that game. When Mark Prior gets Mordecai out, I'm right? Mordecai, is that how you? I think that was his name. After they get to 1 out in the 8th, they have a 95% probability that they're going to win that game, according to Baseball Prospectus or Baseball Reference. After the Pierre double, they're still at 92%. After the Alou incident, and then Castillo gets on base with the wild pitch, putting runners at first and third with 1 out, they're still at 86%. The Pudge RBI single that plates Pierre, putting Castillo on third and Pudge on first, is 79%. And then, even after the Gonzalez era, which plates Castillo, you're still at 68% to win that game. So all of these terrible things happen. And even after that Gonzalez era, which I know Ben, you are really adamant he should have had it, and I'm not gonna fault or disagree with you on that. But even after that era, you still have first and second, 1 out. You should be able to get out of that inning at worst tied at 3. And we all know how it ends. So we know Ben's story of the screaming after Game 7 and the depression that hit Matt. Go for it. Lead us to the darkened land.
It's crazy that almost 13 years ago now, that I watch replays of this and it like tears me up inside. It is so hard to watch. And I take the whole Bartman, all that crap out of there. That to me that has very little to do with the outcome and nothing to do with the outcome of that game because Alex Gonzalez had a very easy ball hit straight at him that he should have got. The thing that always has bugged me is after that, why didn't Dusty at least go to the mound? Why didn't he at least just go out there, talk to Pryor?
Busy chewing his toothpick, Matt. Chewing his damn toothpick.
He was far too busy doing that, and I never understood that. Why? Just go out there, calm him down, reassure him things are fine. It happens. It's a baseball game, but it was that thing that the Bartman thing happened, whatever, and then Gonzalez boots that ball, and it was that's it. I mean, they lost that game, and I had no thought whatsoever. I did not believe at all that they would win Game 7 at all. Not even in the slightest.
The only time I thought they'd win Game 7 was when Kerry Wood hit that 3-run homer to tie it at 3. I also wanted to add in terms of percent chance of winning, just to really hammer home how awful this was. In Game 7, the Cubs went into the top of the 5th inning, leading 5-3, and Baseball Reference had a 75% win probability for the Cubs in the top of the 5th inning in Game 7. Benjamin, this one pained you really bad. I mean, it pained all of us, but I know you wear this scar almost as though they personally tried to kill you that night. Therapy session, Ben Russo. Let's go.
I vaguely remember when it first happened with the whole Bartman thing. I'm sure I was upset about it. I'm sure I wasn't happy, but once you take the step back, you realize 99.9% of the people are going for that baseball. The other 0.01% or 0.1% are hiding from the baseball because they don't want to get hit with it. But that Gonzalez play, I will not stand for anybody who says that wasn't a routine play. I watched that play 30 times today to refresh my memory. The ball hopped about 7 or 8 feet in front of him. It was coming chest high. He had his glove right there. It hit him right in the glove. And, I mean, Alex Gonzalez, for all his faults, I'm not saying he was, Ozzie Smith type defensively, but that was kind of why you had him and Grudzielanek in there. Their range wasn't the best, but they were going to make those easy plays. They weren't going to go laying out for him. That was a tailor-made double play. You had Miguel Cabrera running down the first base line. Granted, he was faster then than he is now, but that's a double play.
About 120 pounds faster.
And I think I'm going to make the argument that, okay, even if
I don't think you want to make this argument.
No, I think at the very least, Gonzalez should have walked out of that getting the out at second. He had to range away from second base. So if he ranges towards
he took
third,
like a step to the right.
But he goes for the backhand, and at worst, even if he just takes it slow, gloves the backhand, tosses it to second, you're still at the very least sitting there with 2 outs, man on first.
It's a double play.
I'm not saying that's not. I'm just saying if you.
No, you are saying it's not. Right now, you just said it.
All I'm saying is, I will say he should have at least gotten 1. I can forgive not turning 2. I can forgive not turning 2. I can't forgive getting nothing there.
Okay, I just watched the replay. He took 2 steps to his right.
2 very small steps.
2 very small steps, yes.
Basically, you know why he took 2 small steps? To get in position to turn a goddamn double play that he should have turned. But anyway, besides Alex Gonzalez being terrible,
not that none of us are still bitter over it.
Nobody's bitter about this at all.
But then you go to, Matt made the point of why didn't Dusty Baker at least go talk to Mark Pryor? Listen, I totally understand what Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood were to that team that year, in that playoffs for that matter. You are up 3-2 with a chance to go to the World Series. After that, there is no way, I don't care what pitcher you are outside of a handful of them, you're rattled. There is no reason at that point. You got a gem from Mark Pryor. He should have been out of that game at that point. The fact there was I understand you probably weren't warming somebody up to start the inning. Well, once you get, all this weird stuff starts happening, there should have been people warming up. There wasn't even anybody warming up at that point.
And you could have gone to anyone too. You could have legitimately
they
said,
had
"We're going to go to
pitchers. They had 4 bullpen arms who had an ERA plus above 120 that year. You had Borowski, you had Farnsworth, you had Remlinger, and then you had Guthrie. Now, I'm not saying these are household names who are, shut down guys.
But no reliever ever is. Nobody ever.
But they're guys, and that's their job. Their job is to
in
go
that
into
season
those
who were
situations.
performing. Like at the very least, you had Farnsworth and Borowski. There was no reason not to go to those guys. Borowski had like I want to say it was like a 2.68 ERA, and his FIP was like a 2.9. Farnsworth was like a 3.16 ERA, and his FIP was lower, so he should have been better than what his ERA said. Those were guys that you should have went to get that key out. The strikeout would have been huge. If you not getting a double play, it is what it is, but you get that strikeout, sets it up because you need one more out. You don't have to worry about playing deep, no doubles, anything like that. Cutting, not Baker just horrible that inning. Horrible. What a time for everybody to just forget to do their job in one inning. Just unbelievable.
It just seems like everybody was standing there looking at each other like, oh.
They were. Did you see? Yeah. Did you watch Baker in the dugout?
Well, yeah. If you see
every time something happened, he'd like take a step back and he's like,
if you see directly after the Gonzalez boot, Pryor looks right into the dugout. He was like begging, like, "Hey, come out here, talk to me, do something," because he's just
slow
like
this game down.
Yeah. But yeah, we're not bitter.
Not at all.
I'm bitter. I wasn't bitter until today when I realized I had to do some research on it. I forgot about it for a while.
The win percentages is really what killed me today. To see that even after the Gonzalez error, they still had a 7 in 10 chance of winning this game. To see even in Game 7, they had a 3 out of 4 chance of winning the series still, just made me angry. So let's wrap this up with some wonderful closing thoughts. Matt, I think Ben's still seething a little, so let's go to you first. Closing thought.
My closing thought is this is more than likely going to be the most depressing list we do. I can't really think of other depressing lists or lists that will hit this hard. So I promise we will be a little more positive moving forward on some things. But I do think this is a good list because it goes to show that while we have been spoiled, we were spoiled growing up by the Bulls and the Blackhawks as of late. There has been some pretty rough things that have happened in the last decade and a half or so in the city of Chicago. So as sad and depressing as this list was, it was kind of fun fun's not right. Never mind. I'm not saying fun. It was terrible. I hated it. I can't wait to do the next one.
There's a quote from the movie Rounders where at the beginning of the movie, Matt Damon's character is talking about how if you talk to any poker player, they can remember every bad beat they've ever taken with all the detail and remember every little thing about the hand. But if you ask them about their winning hands, it's like, yeah, I won that hand, but they could really remember the detail. And I think, I've got a great list going for the happiest moments in Chicago sports that we'll hit in a couple weeks. But for me, I remember every little thing about all of these events happening. Ben, closing thought for you.
No, I mean, like Matt said, fun's not the right word, but it was good to go back and look at these and just remember, God, how close we were a few times to really celebrating a lot of good in Chicago, and can't thank the Blackhawks enough for burying a lot of these horrible memories that I have from these. But
and yet they still show up twice on this list, which is unbelievable. That's how spoiled we are. Oh, my. All right, next week we're going to hit the 10 best Super Bowls from 1990-93 on to today. So that's going to be the top 10. So if you hit us up on Twitter at Winded City CD, you could respond to us with maybe one of your favorites and why it's your favorites, and we can include some of those comments in the podcast next week. Remember, we also have a Tumblr. Ben's going to be putting up a post Monday night, tonight, about the woes of the Chicago Bulls and what the hell's going on over there on the west side. We're also going to have some material from Matt Urich up this week. Matt's going to have something football related, I'm going to guess. That's your bread and butter.
Probably. Yeah, I think I might. I kind of want to touch on the Cam Newton pretty much what his season's been like, and maybe even look at what Denver can do to slow him down. So hopefully the plan for me is to get at least one or two things up a week on our Tumblr. Some may be long form, some might be some short stuff, but looking forward to that. And before we get out of here, I do want to say a big thanks to Ben's brother Justin, who designed our new logo, which I think is just fantastic. It's plastered all over. It's attached to our podcast. It's attached to our Twitter, to our Facebook page. It's attached pretty much to anything we can right now. So I think Justin did an awesome job, and really, really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, and you could catch him at the Roostar on Twitter. He is an awesome graphic designer, so if you ever need some work done, you can hit him up on Twitter and maybe see if you work something out with him. And for those of you that don't see the videos on YouTube, because we do post these videos on YouTube, in the image, I'm on the left, Ben's in the middle, Matt's on the right, and the three of us, we make up Winded City Countdown.
Scott's the guy who wears the same shirt every week.
I do. I wear the same shirt every single week.
Because he only owns one, as far as we know.
For sure. So for Ben Russo, for Matt Urich, thanks again for listening. Be sure to hit that nice subscribe button in iTunes. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Winded City CD, and check out our work on Tumblr. Ben again with the Bulls article going up tonight, and Matt with some stuff on Cam Newton later this week. Thanks for listening.